We're off to a great start. The podcast isn't even started, and we're off to a great start. How are
It's
you?
like that like every week. Wonderful. How are you?
Great. I'm great. Um, this week's old guy young guy is going to be a trip. That's all I'll say. Um, this is the Stuff Summer Says podcast
Steve.
with Steve. We also had an interesting week, or well, I had an interesting week last week, Steve. I don't know if you heard, but big week for the media empire. Did you? Have you
Oh yeah, your big run. Yes,
yeah,
yes. I
I
forgot when
did.
you didn't even have the lineup.
I did 0% of the work and got 100% of the credit. So
That's a
I'm
wonderful
very
thing.
happy about that. No, yeah, okay. Here's let's. I want to
Yeah,
address
back
this.
up and give people the context. Yes.
Let's address this off the top of the bat because I'm sure that's what you're wondering about this week's podcast. Jordan went to USC and posted it. He paid probably $1,800 to run out onto the field in Penn State gear. Which seems like an error by the USC people, and somebody got in trouble for this. I saw it, and as I've done quite literally almost 100,000 times, thought I'm gonna tweet this. This is interesting, and did not think it would blow up the way it blew up. Now Jordan's life's changed, so I'm happy for Jordan. You know.
It was cool. It was the biggest news. Some of the biggest non-football news. It was the biggest non-football news after the game.
Yeah. So you know.
He got a call from the coach.
He's getting stuff. I sent him
He's
some
getting
stuff.
stuff. He got all kinds of stories written about him.
Yeah. So I just wanted to shout out Jordan before we really dive into the podcast. Okay.
It was very cool.
All right. Our guest this week. So we've got a guest this week, and then we're going to talk about other stuff. We've got a survey to go over. We've got a football game to look forward to, and like I said, there's old guy, young guy in there somewhere. Our guest this week is somebody that kind of known of and cross paths with, as I said, two ships passing in the night type thing to him in the interview. It's Matt Fortuna. Matt joins the show to kind of talk about his new path, I guess would be the best way to say that, and kind of everything that comes along with that, what he's doing, why he's doing it, and yeah, so take a listen to that, and we'll be back after this. Steve, I'm very excited for our guest today because I think somebody I've seen, known, heard about, talked to. Well, I've never talked to, but now we're gonna get to talk to him. Two ships passing in the night, I think, would be the best way to describe our. As I joke about relationship, I think would be the best way to say it with Matt Fortuna.
Nice. Okay. So now we're a ship show.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay.
Naval Academy.
The greatest ship show in college football.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Our guest this week is Matt Fortuna. He is a Penn State grad, most importantly, but he also works. He's the co-host of The Independent, which is a Notre Dame focused podcast. He is the founder of Inside Zone. He is also working with the Chicago Sports Network, which is getting up and running here as we speak. So, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's nice to put a face with a name virtually. And great to catch up with Steve, who I know well from my time at State College as well. It's been a minute since I've been back there, unfortunately. Although seeing the news today that Wisconsin game's in prime time and I'm in Chicago, I might try to make that one. It's a relatively quick trip for me from here to Madison. And with the way Penn State's playing, they're going to be worth the drive so far this season. I mean, they look phenomenal.
I was to say it's you can just I'm going to the game, so you can just hop on our car and we can take you up there. Matt, for those of us listening that do not know your career journey, what is your career journey? How did you kind of work your way to where you are now?
Yeah, Darian. So I grew up in New York, went to Penn State, obviously, graduated class of 2011. Like I said, I left and everything went to hell for a short period of time after there. Cause and effect, I don't know. But I was at the Daily Collegian, was where I made my chops, so to speak. Was always trying I knew I wanted to be a sports writer. Was lucky in that regard, and that I knew what I wanted to do at a young age, and kind of sought out big communication schools and schools that had big time sports that I would have the opportunity to be around. And no shortage of that at Penn State. But the one thing I think you can't really appreciate until you're really in it, and especially when you're out of it. Being 18, 19, 20-year-old kid is, the Penn State alumni network is real. Like the Penn State community is real. Like there's so many important and more importantly, helpful and kind people out there with a Penn State degree who want to pay it forward and will go out of their way to help Penn State students who show the initiative. And once that was conveyed to me in so many terms, I made it a point. Anytime there was someone coming to speak to a class or to speak on campus, or if I was covering a game and I recognized a writer from another covering another team that whose work I was familiar with, I always went out of my way to try to say hello, introduce myself, ask for feedback. I'm sure I was very, very annoying, but I didn't really care. Like, I was pretty shameless at the time, and frankly, I think sometimes you need to be when you're young and you have nothing to lose in that regard. So that I was fortunate enough, Steve, Mike Portman, Malcolm Rand, there were so many great people I felt like I had in my corner at Penn State. And that certainly was recognized elsewhere, like MLB.com, which unfortunately I believe doesn't do an internship anymore, but they had an internship program where they, would come to different campuses and interview for it. And Penn State was always one of the stops they made because they loved hiring Penn Staters every summer. And that was a testament, obviously, to the people who had the internship before me and to the adults, the professors, the teachers who had developed those relationships with the power brokers that be. And I was fortunate enough to intern back-to-back summers there. First year, 2010, between junior and senior year, covering the Pirates, and then right after I graduated, covering the Yankees, which as a kid from New York was a dream come true. I got to cover Jeter's 3000 Ted and all sorts of drama in New York. But you learned a lot just from that real world experience. And even a year before that, I was covering minor league baseball as an intern for the Altoona Mirror, and that ended up in some ways being the springboard I needed because I was getting a lot of hands-on work at a young age, at a small paper, but around professional baseball players. And a lot of those AA Pirates players ended up being in the majors a year later when I was covering the Pirates there. And, there was that facial recognition and, those early seeds of developing relationships that ultimately go a long way when you're covering a beat. So I just think I was very, very fortunate while at Penn State to be surrounded by so many people who were able to nudge me in the right direction and offer a helping hand whenever that was needed. And from there, I kind of, like what I was just saying, I befriended a writer from Ann Arbor named Mike Rothstein, who was always around covering Michigan, Penn State stuff. ESPN at the time was launching or expanding their college coverages and was hiring him to cover Michigan, and said, hey, is there any young, aka cheap talent you would recommend? And fortunately for me, he gave them my name, and so I went from interning with MLB covering the Yankees to going to ESPN.com. Was initially actually hired to cover Ohio State. Something fell through on their end. I ended up at Notre Dame. And I spent 6 years at ESPN covering mostly Notre Dame football, but a little bit of everything. And, you're at a big organization like that. I mean, you're getting your hands on everything, right? Like, there's a scandal, you're on SportsCenter. If there's a big issue, you're going on Outside the Lines. You're going on a million different radio shows. All these different tools that, you have access to are just, it's unbelievable, right? And the platform there too. Like, I don't think I was any smarter when I went on TV than when I didn't. But if I'm covering Notre Dame players and their locker rooms turn to SportsCenter every day and they see my face up there and I'm going to interview them right after, there is currency in that, whether that is through my own doing or not. And from there, I was at The Athletic, and very, very different experience, but an awesome experience. One I don't think a lot of people are fortunate enough to get in journalism, where you're at the ground level of building something up that I think a lot of people from the outside were doubting. Stuart Mandel had called me up in the summer of 2017 and said, hey, have you ever heard of The Athletic? I'm going to build out their college football staff. Would love if you could get in with us at the ground level. And I actually did hear of The Athletic because their first site was in Chicago, and I was living in Chicago, and most of their Chicago employees at the time were all the ESPN Chicago guys who had just gotten laid off, along with me, who was in Chicago, but was technically an ESPN Chicago employee. So I was a paying subscriber to The Athletic, one of the very first. And so I was like, yeah, no, I've been waiting for you guys to kind of, expand your horizons. I'd love to dive in and see what we can build here. And I'll never forget just being, there were 6 writers and 2 editors. We're in a room in the college football playoff building. They kind of said, here, you can use this to build out your website, so to speak. And we're just throwing out ideas on a whiteboard, throwing out numbers, wondering if this is going to work, if people are going to pay to read stuff on the internet. And, we had very modest goals that first year, and we realized very early on we were smashing those goals, and we were on the way to building something big. And to be there when we crossed 1 million subscribers as a company, to be there when we got acquired by the New York Times, just really again, like 6 years ESPN, 6 years of The Athletic, two of the blue bloods now in sports media, and they could not have been any more different experiences, both for better and for worse in some cases. But I just felt like coming out of both those experiences, yeah, I had my hands in so many different things. I just felt like I was so prepared for whatever was going to come next.
So now you're doing the Substack route, and you've also got the podcast, The Independent. Um, how scary was it to kind of go out on your own and take that leap?
A little bit. Yeah, you gotta have a few screws loose, I think, to give up a job that you still have. And I'm certainly appreciative of everyone at the Athletic. Like, again, left on really good terms. Still talk to everyone there all the time, and it just was one of those situations where I felt like I reached my ceiling there. There were a couple of round of layoffs, and again, I was fortunate enough to survive them. But it got to the point where I'm kind of looking around, thinking, all right, like, am I just on a day-to-day contract here, right? For lack of a better term. And I don't think it was anything personal, but I just felt like, now or never if I want to, further advance my career. So took the leap of faith, would have been summer of 23. Started the Inside Zone subscription website, although there's plenty of free content available on there as well. And look, it's been a challenge. It's been rewarding, but it's been challenging. I feel like I'm learning something new every day as far as readership, interacting with readers, being your own editor, scheduling things out appropriately. Like I'm pretty good at time management. I'm also, for better and for worse at times, a workaholic. And like, I just remember that first week thinking I was out to dinner with my family and I'm thinking like, yeah, I've got this story I've going up tomorrow, but like, I'm not keeping an editor up right now waiting for me. So I'll just go out, I'll put the kids to bed and I'll write it tonight. And sure enough, I pull an all-nighter because I'm stupid and that's what I do. And everything gets through the process clean and the story comes up, but I'm miserable the next day because I just did not, get any sleep or plan anything. And it's like, you're learning these kind of lessons the hard way as you're kind of a jack of all trades. So it's been rewarding in that regard. And then the podcast was something Pete Sampson and we had done when we were at the Athletic. We were able to take it literally independent and call it the Independent, and own that ourselves. Our producer actually is Mike Wolf. I'm not sure if Steve knows him, but he was a Penn Stater a couple of years ahead of me as well, who worked at the Big Ten Network and actually had a Penn State podcast back when he was at school before podcasts were really a thing. So fortunate to have him, as a fellow Chicago local and Penn State grad in my corner and an absolute expert when it comes to audio. And again, learning things every day about audience development, what sells, what doesn't, and approaching things differently. Certainly, like I got to differentiate myself if I'm going to succeed, right? So I'm not just going to write a quick news story on the same thing that everyone else is happening, or write a quick game story on the same thing that everyone else is writing. I've got to bring it every day, present new content, new information that's going to make it worth the reader's while to take their credit card out and hand over their money to me, because there are a lot of options out there and it's tough to stand out. And I'm learning that both the easy way and the hard way at times.
We've talked to athletes we've had on here about competition. I think I've asked about competition, how do you stay sharp? For you, who is the competition and how do you stay sharp? Like, how are you trying to find those ways to differentiate yourselves? And I assume there's victories and losses or failures and things that do work and don't work, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I felt like I was a little lucky in the sense of last year, right when I started, was right when the Northwestern scandal broke. And that's a program I'm very close to just because I'm 20 minutes from campus. And it's a Big Ten program, but they don't have any local beat writers outside of the student paper. They don't have, people covering them, locally from the Chicago stations or papers or even nationally, unless there's a big game or a scandal, right? And so, again, I mentioned currency and relationships. Like, I became the go-to guy, I feel like, for a lot of information there, because it was a rapidly evolving story. It was a huge story. A legendary coach got fired for something that happened off the field, and he's suing the school right now. And there's a lot of elements there and a lot of, frankly, misinformation that's out there as well. So I felt, that was a good starting point for me as far as establishing myself as authority on a subject that was in the news. I don't say this to brag, but like, I can't tell you how many TV hits I did on local Chicago stations then, because it was like, all right, this guy knows about Northwestern. We're kind of just dropping in here. Tell us what we need to know. And so it was very beneficial in that regard. And, things ended up on the field working out for them pretty well last year. And that helped me establish new relationships at a place that was kind of the embodiment of consistency from the president on down to where now it's all new faces. But I still feel like I'm getting in at the ground level with a lot of those people and a lot of those relationships. So, I mean, that's a very micro example, as far as, being an expert. Like, yeah, I had information on Alabama's coaching search last year that I think was better, or at least more timely than a lot of other people's. That's harder to get out as a guy in Chicago who Alabama fans may not be as familiar with, right? And so that's been a challenge, right? I was the first person to write last year that Mark Stoops was looking like he was going to be the Texas A&M head coach, which he was. And I got a lot of subscribers out of that. I got most people saying, like, it's clickbait, you're making it up, blah, blah, blah. They would never hire him. Well, yeah, they were going to hire him. And when they saw the backlash, they pulled the offer. So it's cashing in on those relationships. I'm not traveling as much as I did before, just because I'm kind of my own budget guy in that regard. But the Big Ten being what it is right now, I mean, Oregon's the number 2 team in the country. I'm going to see them Friday because they're playing at Purdue 2 hours away. I can do that now that they're not in the Pac-12, and then I'm going from there. And I didn't even think about it. I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to Northwestern Wisconsin because it's the last Northwestern game at that pop-up stadium. But I could have gone to Illinois, which is close, and they're playing the defending national champs. I could have stayed in state and seen undefeated Indiana play Nebraska in the Big Noon Kickoff, which was not a game I had circled on my preseason calendar as I'm budgeting things out, but was one that I gave consideration to. But I think geography's worked to my advantage for the most part in that regard as well. And it's just taking advantage of mastering those relationships and mastering the news at a time where I think Joe fan, the average college football fan, there's a lot of confusion, right? Like we all follow this every day, so we can keep up with it. But you're sitting watching Oregon, Ohio State with your wife or a friend you haven't seen in a while, and they're saying, "Why is this a Big Ten game?" Like, it's still new and shocking to, I think, to a lot of people who are not in it, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to people who are not in it. And I can completely sympathize with that. I hope that I can help make sense of the nonsensical in that regard.
I was gonna say, it doesn't even, sometimes it doesn't make sense when we pay that much attention to it.
Right.
It was still weird watching that the Penn State game and the Oregon game this weekend. I have noticed you competing with the big dog, so to speak, on the insider source kind of bigger story game. Why is that something you want to pursue? And how do you develop? You talk about those relationships. How do you start trying to develop those relationships to kind of build out a little bit more?
Yeah, no question. It's super competitive, and you got to be married to your phone. So it's got to be a conscious decision if that's something you want to dive into. And to be honest, that was never something when I got into this business, and even my early days at the Athletic, I always thought of myself as kind of like a features writer, right? Like, give me an hour with someone and I'll tell their life story better than anyone else could, or at least that was my mentality. And at the Athletic, those things sold really good, which was also rewarding from a journalistic standpoint. But I just, it's something I just feel like I've found myself gravitating to over the years as I cover the sport longer and longer and see the same faces in different places more and more. And just, I think COVID in some ways was a great equalizer in that regard, because no one could travel. You were kind of left with, whatever relationships you already had and trying to build new ones and hopping on Zooms like this. And I think realizing you don't have to be in 10 different places at once to get information, right? Certainly it helps. I still think this is a people to people business. And the more I can get FaceTime with someone, the bigger leg up I'll have on other people as far as chasing news and things of that nature. But again, it comes back to relationships. And, a lot of these guys, the more you get to know them, the more they want to help you, because they see there's a lot of BS out there, and when they have information they want to share, they want to get that off their chest to someone who they can trust with it and who's going to put it in the proper context. I mean, I think back to Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame, which shocked all of us. But, Pete Sampson he's the Notre Dame beat writer at The Athletic, and I was at The Athletic at the time. And I felt like we owned that story as best as we could, just because we had the relationships inside that building. And, we had guys in that building calling us, every couple of minutes asking for, because it was a scramble, right? The staff was blindsided by it. We were blindsided by it. But there was a lot of hey, do you think I have a shot at this job? And I remember thinking no, Marcus Freeman's going to get the job. I'm 99% sure that's how it's going to end. I don't want to break bad news to you, but you're wasting your time. They're not interviewing anyone else right now. And there were just a lot of instances like that. There's a lot of, information exchange and things of that nature. And I just think the more you're on your phone, the more you're around people, the more you're just in contact with people and not just taking cheap shots on Twitter or doing something for a few laughs. Like the better opportunity you have to put yourself in position to succeed. Like these are not phone calls where I'm calling Steve up because I need a favor out of the blue. Like I know Steve, he knows me. We can we have that kind of back and forth give and take relationship where we can hopefully bank on when we need each other. Just to use like the relevant example.
I guess I was just going to ask, like, for lack of a better way of asking, what percentage of your phone calls, conversations are off the record versus on the record?
Honestly, at this point, almost anything that's not set up in an official capacity by an SID is off the record.
Really? Okay. I just was curious.
Certainly, like if someone makes a passing comment to like, oh, so I heard so and so is going to get fired. It's well, hey, like, can I use that, right? Or hey, can I source you on that? Not your name. There's again when you have those relationships, it's more of a looser dialogue, if that makes sense, because they know I'm not going to harp on something. And look, I've had people say like, hey, off the record, and I know you won't screw me with this, but Writer X has, so I'm going to tell you this, like, and things of that nature.
That makes sense. No, that makes sense.
Is there a difference in the feel of getting it right with that kind of insider stuff, or the feel of nailing a really good story, like a feature story? Because you talked about the insider stuff, but you've won awards every year the past year from Pick an Organization for your writing. So
appreciate both. I mean, both. I mean, telling a great feature story or getting time with someone who's in the news and who has not spoken or anything of that nature, like that feels really good. Like I'm trying to think of like any relevant examples where like a player or a coach opened up with me in a way they hadn't with others, but that feels good because like they're trusting you with their life story, so to speak. News wise, absolutely. Like there's a great thrill in having a scoop and beating the competition to a story, especially when it's something that you got and that no one else has. Like even a relevant example today, like I got a text last night saying, have you heard anything about Benjamin Morrison, Notre Dame's best player, who Marcus Freeman announced today is out for the year with a hip injury? And he didn't leave the game, I don't think, Saturday. There nothing happened Saturday that would lead anyone to think he's hurt. And I got a text last night, and it wasn't from like a source. Frankly, it was a fan who was talking to someone, gossip. It was, you heard anything about Morrison? I'm like, no, I haven't, but let me look into that. And I asked around a couple of people, just like, hey, is something up with Morrison? And again, when you have the relationships, like you can like the people who would usually respond to me didn't respond to me, which immediately raised my radar up, right? Mm-hmm. And I think they didn't want to say anything out of respect for him because he's probably not going to play college football anymore. He's going to be a first-round pick in the spring, and I'm sure he wanted to like package the news himself. But then my radar's up, so I'm digging some more, and I've got, hey, something's up with him. I don't know what. And he was dealing with a shoulder injury all year, so I thought for sure he's either just going to shut the season down and prepare for the draft because he got a shoulder problem, or he further hurt the shoulder, he's going to have surgery. And Notre Dame, which usually puts out their depth chart and game notes at, say, 11 a.m. Central every Monday, didn't do that. So now something's up. And up until the very minute where Marcus Freeman got up there and said he's out for the year with hip surgery, I'm trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And to be fair, I did not know it was a hip. So again, you learn something new every day, right? And so it makes you wonder, like, what I've done had I gotten information that he was out for the year. Maybe just be as not vague, but out for the year with an injury, right? Like, because there's a lot of pushback, especially in the medical community, I think, with reporters when it comes to breaking news on the injury front and things of that nature. But again, this is their best player. This is a team that's right in the thick of the playoff race. Like, it's about as major personnel news as you can get, short of the quarterback on that program. And that's just kind of like a relevant, timely example of like a story that never was, although it ended up being some pretty big news.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
I do want to talk some ball just a little bit, but I kind of want to ask this a little bit open-ended question of 5 years from now, where's the inside zone?
God, if I could tell you that, I'd do it tomorrow. Yeah, it's funny. I get this question about the state of the business, right? And I'm asking it about the state of the business with everyone. 5 years ago, I was not even doing podcasting. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like when I got asked to do it at the Athletic, I was like, okay, I've never podcasted before. What do I need to do? I'm not good with tech. Like nothing. Like you click a Zoom link every week and you talk. Okay, easy enough. I hope it's established itself as a go-to site for college football information, like at least in the industry, right? And I think it's getting there in the industry as far as like you look at my subscriber list, it's mostly people at schools and people I deal with and talk to. So certainly want to spread and family members, of course. So certainly want to spread the wealth around a little bit in that regard. And look, there's so much change in this business, right? I mean, if you look at I've been gone from the Athletic a little more than a year, and while there's certainly a handful of people there that I talk to all the time who've been there when I were there, there's been a lot of turnover there. And that's arguably as established and as consistent a print brand as there is in college football sports media right now. There's realignment in college football. There's a coaching carousel in college football, and then there's a media cycle where it feels like people are switching jobs all the time. And perhaps during all that chaos, I can allow myself and my site to build itself up to a consistent enough level where it has brand recognition, it has name recognition, it has that reliability beyond just the people who know me and are already familiar with my work or have been talking to me for stories. This may be more of a pipe dream, but I'd love to be in a position where I can hire help. Not there right now. I've had college kids reach out, and like as much as I'd love to have an intern, I can't pay you in anything right now, so I don't really want to make you work for me, as appeasing as that sounds. But I hope it's continued to establish its footing, and 5 years from now is at a place where the majority of college football fans know what it is.
I listen. Steve's unpaid, so he's doing all right for me. So that's all I'll say.
Can we do a timeshare?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
We'll double his salary too after that.
You keep doubling it, but it keeps looking the same.
I know.
Okay.
All right. I think I'm curious on the, for lack of a better term, Midwestern perspective on Penn State right now. What is the Midwestern perspective out in the Chicagoland area of Penn State football right this year?
It's funny breaking it down Midwestern, right? That would have been like the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Years ago. Now it's just 1/2 or 1/3 of Big Ten country. It's funny just being in Chicago. Like it kind of is like big. Like all my friends here that I met all went to Big Ten schools, but like none of them went to Penn State. Like I have no Penn State friends out here, which is annoying in some regards, and then kind of fun on other days because I actually do have a few USC fans who I was able to talk trash to on Saturday. But look, I mean, I think every great team has a game like that this past Saturday where, things might not be working for you. You're going to have to do some things that you have not been asked to do before. You're going to have to make a 4th down play or two and maybe get a little bit lucky with a missed field goal or a bad throw on 3rd down and take advantage of that. And I thought Penn State, the way they won in some ways was more impressive than had they just gone out there and beat them by 14 points. I was not terribly surprised that USC got off to the start that they did in that game. I just thought that was a desperate, talented team that was going to throw it all out there, knowing that if they lost another game, their playoff hopes were done. And they were doing that for a while. They're not where they need to be defensively. Offensive line, I figured they'd wear out eventually. I was, in real time at least, disappointed with the performance from Penn State's defense across 4 quarters. But look, whatever you think of Drew Aller and his game, like that guy showed some stones when it mattered most, making those 2 throws to Julian Fleming, who himself, rebounded nicely in that game. He had a drop earlier. He had the OPI that took away a touchdown. I just thought, Penn State, and I don't think there's shame in this, although I'm sure people, after losses think differently. They're the rare team that wins the game. All the games they're supposed to win. Now, they haven't got too many upsets lately, and that's caused a lot of frustration among the fan base. But historically, they're not losing games that they shouldn't be losing. Historically, they have not fared well against Ohio State and Michigan. I think Paterno was 6-10 against Michigan. They were his ultimate foil when he was at his prime there. For them to win that game against what on paper is an unranked team and a team that was an underdog, but for them to win it the way they did, I just think, especially going into the bye, I mean, look, the schedule gets a lot tougher the rest of the way. I think they'll be favored in every game except for the Ohio State game, which itself looks a little bit more winnable after both teams' results this week. But like going to Madison is not an easy trip, and Wisconsin right now looks night and day from what they looked like a month ago. But they go to Minnesota too, I think. I mean, they've got they go to Minnesota. Washington's Washington, Maryland's Maryland. Purdue this year's Purdue. Maybe I'll see you at that game too, since I'm going this week as well. But playing all those games in a row, 6 straight Big Ten games, Wisconsin, Ohio State back to back, the whiteout after that, which if nothing else is an emotionally charged game. That takes a toll on you in Big Ten play. USC is learning that the hard way, right? Like they're a talented team that's lost 3 Big Ten games by giving up game-winning touchdowns or game-tying touchdowns on the final drive each and every time. Like these games, by their very nature, are close, and it's about winning them on the margins and making those big plays when it matters most. And Penn State was able to do that this past weekend. And again, I don't know what the record is now. I think it's like 25 or something. It's a high number of where they've won X number of straight games as a favorite in the regular season or in the Big Ten play. And I think it's very easy to take that for granted. And then you see USC lose to Minnesota. You see, upsets happen left and right around the country, particularly in the Big Ten. And it's like, this is hard. Like this is hard. I'm sure you guys hear it a lot more than I do, but I get, time to move on from Franklin. He can't win the big one, blah, blah, blah. Well, I could show you a lot more examples of teams that stuck with it with their really good coach who eventually broke through than I can teams who fired their really good coach and were good after. Dabo Swinney comes to mind. He would go 10-2 every year and lose to Florida State and South Carolina. And he had a famous quote in the heart of that said, for whatever reason, God chose me to be the head coach of Clemson during the absolute best period of Florida State and Clemson and South Carolina football. And you know what? We're not talking about Florida State or South Carolina much anymore. Dabo won 2 titles. In fact, we're talking about what can Dabo do to get back to being at that level. Even Jim Harbaugh, right? I mean, whatever you think of him, he's a really good football coach, and Michigan's a really good football program. It took him 9 freaking years to win a national title there, and they did it by the skin of their teeth, and they did it against probably the worst Ohio State team of the last 13 years and the worst Alabama team of the last 13 or 14 years. Like, I think when your program's in a good place like Penn State is, you will get a year or two where the cards line up for you just right, and you need to take advantage of it. And based on what we've seen so far, particularly in that USC game, I think they've got a chance this year to make a deep run.
We're just going to play that clip on a loop for a lot of Penn State fans.
Yeah, right after when they lose to Wisconsin, right?
Yeah. Okay. I want to get out. You be mindful of your time, but you are a Penn Stater, so you have to go through the gauntlet of 3 Penn State related questions. First one is your go-to creamery ice cream flavor.
I want to say I got cookies and cream. No, was it cookies and cream? I'm trying to think. Because we went there. We drove through with my family, spent the night. My now 5-year-old could not believe I went to school and lived across the street from a place that had an ice cream shop. So she really liked that. I want to say I got cookies and cream, but I could be wrong there.
I love that. You're the czar of Penn State sports. You can make one change, any change you want, but what change are you making for one day?
A loaded question. And that's also like the dream job for anyone who went there, right? You always think about what would I do different? What would I do? Any change?
We've had Rec Hall, games at Rec Hall.
Yeah, it's funny. My thoughts immediately went to the men's basketball program, like just something around something to enhance the support of that product. Because I don't think they're lacking for support in football or wrestling or hockey. And Micah Shrewsbury showed in a very brief time there, like you can win there if you get the right coach and the right players. You just need the support.
Okay. All right, let's go in. All right, last one. You're back in town for one night and one night only. What bar are you walking into?
I don't know what I mean. Every time I go there, I'm like, wait, this isn't.
It can be your bar. It doesn't have to be still there.
It doesn't have to still be there. I think it's still there, but I'll go Bill Pickles.
Okay. I like that answer. It's still there. So you can.
As a sports fan, I just thought that was the greatest balance of being able to drink and watch. Like, I got a diploma, so I can say now, every March Madness when I was there of age, we would skip whatever days of classes we got and just set up shop at a table at Pickles and watch all the games. And a professor who, well, actually, it's not Steve, so you could probably guess who it is, but who you all may or may not be familiar with, saw us there once and sent us a picture instead of bringing us up. So I always appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good.
There you go.
That's good. See? All right, Matt, where can people find you, your stuff, everything? This is your second or moment to plug.
Thank you. Find me on the Inside Zone for my written work at InsideZoneMF.com. $50 a year for an annual subscription for top-of-the-notch national college football coverage. I'm on Twitter, X at Matt_Fortuna, on Instagram and TikTok now. Just trying to dip my toes into something there. Don't know if I'm any good at it. But at Matt Fortuna CFB, and the Independent Podcast, which is a Notre Dame-centered podcast, part of the same network, however, as Audrey Snyder and John Sauber's Penn State podcast and Indy Dispatch as well. So that's been fun as well, again, to work with them in that capacity too. And then locally in Chicago, every Tuesday night on the Chicago Sports Network, talking football.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Steve, I think Matt is the first true, I'm going to go out and do it on my own. I guess Weinreb Michael does it, his own Substack. And Ben, we haven't had Ben on since he's kind of been in his Substack era, Ben Jones, I mean. But I find myself much easier to fork over money to guys like Matt, partly because he's a very nice guy, but also just, I find it much easier to support the individual than the company. And I think that is one of the interesting things about the Substack kind of time that we're in. I think that stands out to me. I also think, like, if you're not paying attention to Matt or haven't necessarily paid attention to Matt, and part of that's because he was on the Notre Dame beat, so if you're a Penn State fan, which is our target audience, why would you pay attention to the Notre Dame beat? I think you should start paying attention to him, because I think you're going to see him in a lot more places, and I don't want to say wedging himself into the conversation, because that's not the right way to put that, but he's going to be a part of the conversation, at least in the college football world. And I think that's been the most interesting thing about his career growth so far.
Yeah, there's so many voices out there and so many people doing things. It's hard for someone to earn or elbow their way into to the respectful level that his stuff has taken him. I mean, Athletic, ESPN, and then out on his own, like he knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's doing. He's taking a chance on himself. So that was fun to hear as he talked about what he's doing. And I think if you're not at least following him on social media and thinking about, following him more and subscribing and finding this stuff, you're probably making a mistake. I
feel like the Substack thing is kind of my generation's thing a little bit, but are you invested in more and more writers on Substack? Is that something you're using? I'm curious. Yeah.
No, and it's just tough, right? It's kind of like cable and bundles, right? I mean, you start trying to find all of them. It gets to be an investment, but there's so many good voices out there, because that's just the way people can go kind of bet on themselves, or at least have the freedom to do their own stuff in some ways.
Well, and I think, because I mean, I will say, like, when the blog aspect first came up, like, that was, I had thought about it for us, and I just there was too much stuff that I wanted to do with the archives and everything that we've kind of put on the site besides just our writing, that I didn't pick Substack for that reason. But I think it's very appealing, because then you don't have to worry about the stress of not that it's stressful, but any of the stress of hosting a website, all of those things. You need to know a lot more. It's a lot more of an easier template, and I think that's why, honestly, I think that's why more people are taking the opportunity to go out on their own, or go out and bet on themselves to do well. So I thought that was a great conversation, and like I said, I think if you're not paying attention to Matt, you better start paying attention to Matt pretty soon, because he's gonna be everywhere very quickly. Not that he isn't already everywhere.
And he'll be able to say he started. No, he didn't start here. Just kidding.
No. But so thanks to Matt thanks for Matt for joining us. I'm glad we got to have a conversation together. Let's do the survey first. Would you like to do the survey first?
Yeah, let's hear the results.
Okay. All right, we did a survey, our first ever in-season survey. I think moving forward, this is how we'll do it. We'll do a preseason, in-season, and then we'll do an end of season. Last year we only did, I think, end of season, and we're just kind of getting a pulse check on your thoughts, feelings. Now, I will say, slight bias to the survey, given that it was conducted the week after the USC win, and I think big game, big emotion. But I think the results are pretty fair. I think they're pretty fair. So we kind of asked about 3 categories. We asked about the team, the stadium, and then the media. We will save the media for last. We will start with the team, though. So far, the first question was, so far in 2024, Penn State has, and your options were exceeded, met, or underachieved expectations. 76% said that Penn State has met their expectations. 20% has said Penn State has exceeded their expectations. And 4% has said Penn State has underachieved. So I don't know about those 4%, but I think I'm probably in the met expectations category at this point. Leaning,
because they haven't played the games that matter yet, right? I mean, realistically, to be cynical, and you had them 10-2.
I had them 10-2, and you had them
right.
11-1.
Right. So I said met expectations because you haven't played the game that I think they're going to lose yet, right? So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
See, okay, that's fair. All right, next question was, and this was a kind of a follow-up from our end of season survey last year, and I think the answer was like a 3 on this on average. The next question was, how confident are you that Penn State will make the college football playoff this year? And the top answer was a 4, because we asked you to rank it 1 to 5, or pick 1 to 5, 5 being very confident. 4 was the top answer. 48% of people said they're at a 4. 5 was the second answer with 28%, and then 3 was the third answer at 21%. 4 was the average rating, which felt high. But it's like, again,
at this point of the season,
it's an earned high. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised-ish at how high it was.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they got to almost play themselves out of it. I mean, I know it's not that simple, but
no, but like. And we talked about it there with Matt. We've talked about it time and time again on this podcast. They take care of business when they're supposed to, and if they take care of business when they're supposed to, there's a very real chance that Steve's prediction of 11-1 is correct. Like that's what's kind of.
You still sound
I'm just saying.
Good thing
I have data and I have body of proof, and it's all. Anyways, here's what you all said about the team. These are just some of the comments. I appreciate the team that has shown that they can win in different ways, sometimes a strong defense, others a run game, and most recently 400 yards of passing. Perfection isn't a realistic expectation ever. The kids keep growing, performing, and developing in a way that makes us all proud. I hate the whole second half team mantra, play the full game and I'll never complain. I think that's a very fair assessment of how the season's gone this year. And then I'd love to see the defense start the game quick instead of waiting till half. I think those are kind of like, if you were going to find your one complaint about Penn State football, it's a slower start this year. And I think they haven't been perfect, but they've been pretty darn good. So I think that's about where.
Yeah, they've been fun to watch, and again, adding nothing, no losses. So that's about all you can ask for. Okay. Well, it is all you can ask for.
All right, let's move on to the stadium. You guys had a lot of feelings about this one, almost too many feelings. The first question was, and we asked you, it was kind of a pick one of 3. Penn State's Beaver Stadium improvements have either improved, kept game day about the same, or made game days worse. 68% of people said the improvements have not made a major difference on their Beaver Stadium game day. I think that's fair. And then 27% said that they've made game days better, and 4% that said they've made game days worse. So I think there's at least a positive sentiment there. But I think I think they haven't really added that much yet. So I'm still at 68%. I'm with that 68%. I think it would be how I would answer that one.
Yeah, it's the pre-construction. We're doing some pretty stuff, making it neat, changing some branding, and nobody's lost a seat yet or had a seat changed yet. When that happens, the numbers in response might be a little different.
Nobody's angry. I asked this next question because I feel like this has improved, and I wanted to see if this was just a me thing, what the sense was. In general, as it relates to scanning your ticket and entry into Beaver Stadium, getting into the stadium is either faster, about the same, or slower. 62% said it's about the same this year. 31% said it was faster. which I think the fact that 31% of the people that took our survey, which by the way, I think our largest survey ever in terms of respondents, either number one or number two off the top of my head. I think that's actually a win. Like, I think if 31% of people are saying that, particularly amongst this fan base, then I think the entry has gotten faster in a lot of ways.
That's probably true.
And then 9%, I think this was our most realistic answer, I guess would be the best way to say it. 9% got in, say it was slower. I have heard some of the like other gates, like the more traditional gates, are a little bit slower, just depending on like what time you go in. C, especially I've heard isn't great. So I think that was interesting.
Yeah, my only one entry so far this season was great, like because it was early, right? So
And what gate did you go in? B?
B, the one we always go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, we've gone through gate F every single game so far this year, and I think it's been pretty quickly. I've heard gate, what would be D down at the corner isn't terrible. I've heard C and B are still kind of the jam, so I'm wondering if they're like almost testing out our side of the stadium's entry for the other side.
Maybe when F's just so new, like nobody went in F last year. I mean, even though it was there, like they've made it enough that you can come in. So, and it feels like there's fewer people coming. I mean, there's probably not, but everybody kind of converges on B and D. It feels like
right. The corners, the two corners there. Okay, here is the feedback. I tried to go through. I appreciated everybody's answers here because there was multiples of each one of these complaints. I think that's what is very impressive. So this person says, can get Wi-Fi under the concourse, so that's an improved, but there's still a major drawback while you're in your seat. Gate F and the food is much better. Don't tell anyone about this hidden gem. First off, person, we are good fans. We are good fellow fans. We're gonna preach the gospel of Gate F and how quickly it is to get in.
See, they want you to say Gate F sucks, stay away.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I think I'm going to be a nice person. I'm going to take the high ground, Steve. Okay.
So when you don't have any elbow room, the next survey, you'll know, blame Darian.
Yeah, sorry. A couple other people shouted out like the actual area, which I think if you go back to look at like my review of the game day experience, that area, people talked about that and how they enjoyed that. Which we haven't hung out there, but it's cool. Like it's neat to see, and like it's kind of nice when you're standing in line. They've got that big screen there that you can watch whatever's on. So I have appreciated that. Next one is, for the love of God, they need to fix the cell phone reception. My phone is basically a brick during games now. Previously, I could at least use it occasionally. Now I struggle to get cell service even in the tailgate fields. I agree with this person. And I think, again, the Wi-Fi complaint came up. That was the number one complaint of everybody. This is the biggest issue I think fans are sick and tired of dealing with, for a lack of a better term.
We'll come back to this. Like, what's your experience in other stadiums?
They're all like even Bloomington and West Lafayette are better.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
I feel like the problem is the resourcing isn't there. I don't know. It's just like it seems all very fixable, but I don't know enough about the tech. We should get an expert on the podcast all about this. Isn't Dion Butler? We should have asked Dion Butler. He works.
Sure, we should have asked.
He works in that line.
They're probably using that money for the tech they could be used to pay the players. Though. So what do you want? You want players in the field, or you want Wi-Fi?
They're iPads. They cost like $10 these days. So go on Amazon. All right. This next group is all about concessions. Concession lines are long and not well organized. I've heard that, seen that. They're pretty rough. I just don't think there's a good system, and I think that hopefully gets fixed when the concourse gets bigger. The next two are interesting to me because I kind of agree with these, and I think I even sent one of these to you in jest, and now I'm like, I kind of agree with this person the more I think about it. So the first person just said less beer. And then the next person said, too much beer sales. The constant movement in the stands ruins the experience for everyone. Now, I haven't been annoyed by the constant movement in the stands, but I will say, like, the beer sales, there's the beer sales. I think you can alleviate some of the problems that you have with the long lines of like sometimes I just need a drink. I don't need a beer. Like I want a soda, but I gotta wait in the line, the same chicken line as the chicken baskets, which I'm gonna get a chicken basket anyway. But they're not solving the problems the way they could. Like I think just a little bit of creative solving of the problems, maybe less beer. Like I feel like there's way too many beer kiosks, or maybe way too much beer at the kiosk and not enough of other stuff at those little grab and go kiosks that could speed up and make the improvement. So I do agree with those people.
And it's year one of that stuff. Like for as cynical as I can be, you got to go through year one and test that stuff out, and hopefully stuff changes or tweaks a little bit. But realistically, a year where you're going to have data that conveys from one season to the next now isn't going to happen for several seasons, because this year's information doesn't mean anything for next year when the stadium's going to be rejiggered, right?
Right.
And then if there's two seasons, I guess, of construction, that season doesn't lead to the next season. That next season doesn't lead to the full season. So I think you're into, just plugging holes and solving problems as you can and coming up with the best possible plan year to year and not being able to learn on your experiences the next couple of seasons. And I think there's probably going to have to be some patience here for people. And I think they need to be honest about that when the time comes. Hey, we're kind of like, my favorite thing from like Mr. Mom the movie is the Schooner Tuna speech at the end. Like we're all in this together. Well, like I think they're going to have to appeal to that a little bit as they go through this, and hope that people,
And I think they have. I just think, like I said, I think there's a lot of beer sales. I don't know. There's a lot of beer sales, and it's not. I'm not bothered by them per se. Like it's not a ethical bother. It's just sometimes I just want a soda. Like I guess here's what I think about. Like if it was like you and a 12-year-old, like your kid, your 12-year-old kid, and you wanted a beer and they wanted a chicken basket and a soda, now you got to wait in two lines as opposed to one line, and which I guess you can get some beer at the other ones, but yeah. So, I don't know with this next group whether or not they're being serious or real, or we are leading. We have been charging a movement, and if it is that case, I am so thankful. I am so proud of us.
Wait, so you went viral 10 minutes ago? We're having it, and now we're leading a movement. I can't wait to hear this.
We are taking people to the promised land, Steve, and this is our direction we're going.
I'm probably gonna have to pray after this segment.
Yes,
go ahead. What is it?
This first person says, "Are you ready for the fourth quarter is annoying? Last home game, there was so much production between the third and fourth quarters that it felt like a second halftime." Next one. The mic guy needs to stop asking if we are ready for the fourth quarter. Play Mo Bamba or something. Anything but that in the fourth quarter flag. If they really want to get the stadium bumping, make a flag with Franklin's record against Ohio State and Michigan. That should do the trick. God bless that person. That's what I have to say to that person.
They're either trolling us or they're serious. Oh, yeah.
But this is the thing. Like, this is two of just a smattering of several people fired about this fourth quarter thing. I think it's a thing. I think we're onto something. And I just like to say we have been beating this drum, or at least I've been beating this drum for a solid year and a half now. What?
And I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree, because I think you're all going to be disappointed, because I think there's going to be more of that coming forward. Perhaps as soon as the next home game.
No. What are we going to have? Are you ready for this first quarter? Are you ready for the second quarter?
I just think the time between the third and the fourth is going to get a little, and I may want more attention, but it might be more produced. And I told you I had some things I was going to tell you off the air. I can hint at that one, that I think it's going to be, are you ready for the fourth quarter is not going away and may indeed be embraced more going forward.
They just don't read us. That's clear that whoever the decision makers don't read us, and they should know that we are coming for them. We will hunt them down. We will find them.
Stop it.
I was thinking about some new stuff, and I think we should maybe make fourth quarter flags. Please stop asking me if I'm ready for the fourth quarter. It's at least it's going up my tailgate. I think I'm gonna make one. It's gonna go up in my tailgate. Okay. thank you to everybody who gave us feedback there. Last one was the media. We just asked one question, well, two questions, one actual question, and then one if you wanted to answer question. We asked which outlets' coverage have you enjoyed the most so far in the 2024 season? And by a razor-thin margin of one, our preseason champions also took our in-season championship, which is the gang at Blue White Illustrated.
Okay. What were the top 5?
I only pulled the top 3. So
okay.
In second place, very close in the second place, was Onward State. And then Lions 247 was 3.
Okay.
I read, I saw, first off, there were a ton, like, it wasn't like there was a lot of different answers. Like, people had a lot, like, it wasn't like all of the votes just went to like 3 or 5. Like, there were probably, I think there were like 25 options, and I want to say all 25 of them were probably selected at least once. I think the other thing that stood out to me is people were shouting out Landon Tangwall's podcast and the State Media Cruise podcast, the Brandon Bell and Christian Hackenberg one, the pocket. So I thought that was interesting. So I think people are enjoying those, paying attention to those, consuming those. That's become a beneficial add to the media cycle, if you will, for Penn State fans. There was a little bit of feedback. It's nice when some of the outlets does something a little different than what they're all fed. I agree with that person wholeheartedly. And then I thought this one was interesting. Media coverage has generally been more favorable than fans' social media comments, and I think that's 100% true.
Oh, that's no doubt about it. Yeah.
So I thought that
media,
and I think I don't know. I think for as harpy as people are about Penn State's beat, I think they're also like, they're not as cynical as Penn State. The fans are more cynical as Penn State than Penn State's beat, I think is the best way to say that. So, okay. That's the survey.
Nice.
Anything else? Any other thoughts?
No. Are you packed ready? That's the next segment. Are you packed and ready to go?
Not packed yet. Not ready to go yet. Well, I'm ready to go, but I'm very excited to drink some Spotted Cow this weekend. Let's see where to start with Penn State's game with Wisconsin. I am excited to go to Madison for a multitude of reasons. Great college town, great people, everything involved there. I think this just feels like one of those games where, as long as Penn State keeps its head on its shoulders, they're gonna be fine. It's just a matter of they've got to keep coming off of an emotional. I actually think the bye helped because they came off an emotional game. They let their emotions cool down a little bit, and then they're gonna go play this game. And then they've got Ohio State right after. If there was no bye and no ability for them to kind of decompress, so to speak, I would be a lot more anxious about Saturday's game. Not saying that I'm not anxious, because it's a night game in Madison. It's not an easy place to play, easy place to win. I just think it's one of those. It really just feels like they just got to play a solid football game and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't even think about looking up the record with Wisconsin at night at home. Like I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe they're more than 500 and halfway decent. I don't know. They just don't. Not that they're not good, not that they're not whatever. But Penn State should win this game if it goes out and plays. And it's the week after that interests me, and we'll see how this one goes.
It's very much they're better athletes. They're probably better coached. I think they are better coached. I
think Fickle's a good dude.
Oh, right. I don't think
he's bad. His way of doing it out there is a little different than what they've done it, but they're still kind of to their identity. I just think Penn State's a better team.
Yeah, I think it's just they just have to kind of take care of business that way. All right.
Let me ask this.
Yeah.
Would you rather be asked if you're ready for the fourth quarter, or would you rather jump around?
Oh, jump around's electric. I will take part. It is 1B in terms of non-Penn State traditions in the Big Ten, I would say. 1A being the Michigan banner touch. I think the Michigan banner jump thing is really cool. But yeah, I jump around is like it takes a while for it to happen. There's an ad or two before it, but then when it happens, like that whole stadium shakes. Like it does. It's fun. It's fun.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Oh, okay. Whatever, Penn State. That's what you're gonna tell me. Penn State's gonna start playing it at the fourth quarter.
No. I was just curious. I haven't seen it in person. on TV, it comes across just okay. That's all.
It is one of those things that you don't necessarily get it until you experience it. I think
Well, that's helpful.
Then. Yeah. Because I think even I'm trying to think of like the one that we all know my feelings about follow the leader at Ohio State, so I won't. But I think that one, like, at least with jump around, like it just, it's a cool in stadium thing. It does not translate well on television. It really does not.
Good to know.
So, all right. If I've been struggling to write down old guy, young guys this week. I had one and I forgot it.
You said you had one in the middle of the week, yeah.
Yeah, and I forgot it. And so now you're saying that I need to take memory.
So here's the old guy, young guy question. When you get older, will you take like the memory, whatever they're called, Prevagen and whatever else? Will you take those things that you see the commercials for that help people with their memory?
Probably not. Probably not. No.
Yeah, and I don't, and I feel like those who do should disclose, right? Like, I want to know if I'm going to a meeting and somebody else is juiced, right? Like, I'm like, damn, they have good ideas for an old person. Well, but are they cheating? Like, I'd like to know. I'm serious. I mean,
I don't even know what to say to them.
Don't you want to know if you're playing on a level playing field?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Maybe at some point I need to start doing them. So, I don't know if I'm listening. But as I think about that, I'm like, I think they should have to tell people that they're doing that. Like, if somebody comes into a meeting, they're just busting off idea after idea and they're not forgetting anything, you're like, that's impressive. But if they're cheating, it's not as impressive.
Steve just wants more credit. That's all Steve wants. If Steve's
just want a level playing field,
he just
wants transparency. Credit. I think it's consistent with everything else.
Are you a notes guy, like a pen and paper, like you have a note running list of the things you need to get done, or you like?
I probably have two notebooks at once. I'll have a note on my phone. I have two notebooks. I'll have my laptop because the tactile piece helps me if I know I write it and I'm organized. So I may have something about this that gets written down here. I'm like, oh shit, but this thing goes over here. So yeah, like if I'm at a lecture or even in class, if kids are doing something, I might write something about that kid and then say, oh, that was a good idea for an assignment I want to use next semester. So yeah, it's more writing than anything else.
Because like I'll text you. I am just saying this out loud so that I remember it, and that's like one of my go-tos. I also just have like a to-do list manager that I utilize. So yeah, okay, all right. Depth charts, blog. All that stuff this week. Thanks to Matt for joining us. Let's see. What else?
I'm going to write about the James Franklin.
James Franklin.
I was going to say the best coach in the Big Ten, but I don't know if I'm going there. But I'm going to write about James Franklin and why he's the right guy at the right place at the right time, as he's been for a while.
Okay. High praise from Steve. Happy Steve is here, not grumpy Steve. Interesting.
Not even in Nashville.
11-1, Steve. Also going to write about Happy.
It's hard to believe.
That's wild. So appreciate that. There was something else. Oh, stuff is there's stuff on sale. It's always on sale. Like I put something on sale every week now. That's kind of what we're doing. Thanks everybody that's joined the newsletter. We've gotten a big uptick in subscribers there. You'll get stuff like we'll probably send a newsletter, our normal monthly newsletter next week, but like on Mondays I've been just kind of sending out here's what's coming this week. So hopefully you've been enjoying those. Thanks everybody who took the survey. We'll have those website up on the website as well. That website is called stuffsummersays.com. On that website there's a section called with Steve. Let's see. We have emails. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
We've got Twitter handles. Mine's at stuffsummersays. Steve's is
at Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.